everybody, it's Steve Falcon Napier. Welcome to the Oracle of the Self. This is the first interpretation session for Exploration 4, which was about overcoming overwhelm. And so by now, all of you should have taken a moment to complete the ChangeWorks profile. If you've not already done so, if you were to go to our YouTube channel, you will find last week's discovery session on the subject. And as in the description block for that video, you'll find the link to this particular profile. You could also email me directly, and I'm happy to send it to you if you've not already done it. So today we're going to start looking at those results and see what we can learn about it. So to do this, we go to System Access, and I'm going to sign in as the Oracle, the Self account. We'll go and find the change grid. Oh no, I don't want to do a personal change grid. I want to look at this one. And we'll look at the change grid that you guys filled out. So now, yeah. So let me just zoom into this as much as I can. I want to get to cover the screen as much as possible. I guess that's about all I can do. Yeah. Okay, so the first activity we're going to look at is recognizing signs of being overwhelmed in myself. And so I'll go ahead and select that one activity. We'll come down here to the people who filled it out. And as I said, these calls are open. Your names are going to be displayed. So please feel free to be creative. So I thought Connie Found is really a good name for someone to
How confounding.
Yeah, as long as you remember what name you were. And by the way, the system is going to send you your results. And again, I know I say this every time, and I feel like I probably should say it every time. If you can use a fake name, I don't care. You can use a fake phone number. I have no intention of contacting you, but your email address has to be accurate, or the system can't send you your results. So, but all the rest of it, I don't know, make up a name, feel free. Once the population is over 26, well, then this is all going to switch to a very different way that change grid results are shown, and it's inherently anonymous. So we'll see what we do when we get to that point. But anyway, I'd like to see all of you on the grid. So I'm just going to click on view the change grid. And let's see how all of you plotted when it came to recognizing the signs of overwhelm in myself. Now, again, as we're working our way through this activity list, remember that last time around, we did walk through the activity list. So I kind of explained what each one of these activities were about in greater detail. If you'd like to review that, again, that video is up on our YouTube channel at this point. Okay, so let's see where you guys are plotting. So just kind of a review for you guys, where you physically plot on the change grid is indicated by a letter of the alphabet, an alpha character. So each one of you have a corresponding alpha character. And so you can look at my little list here, or you can just kind of figure out based on the results you're looking at on your profile. And you can see which one of these dots belongs to you, if you know what I mean. So activity number one is plotted somewhere on your change grid, where activity plot number one is, that's the alpha character you are for this whole set. Make sense? Questions, comments about that?
No.
Okay, so you guys all know who you are. So now your physical location on the change grid is a reflection of the answers that you gave for perceived ability and perceived challenge. So whoever individual F is rated their ability as being a 9 and the challenge as being a 10 when it comes to recognizing signs of overwhelm in yourself. Now everything is surrounded by a circle. The color of that circle is a reflection of the size rating that you gave. And so if the circle is red, you gave it a high size rating. If it's yellow, you gave it a moderately size rating. And if it's green, a small size rating. The color of your alpha character is a reflection of the level of importance you attach to the activity. And if the letter or number itself, the character itself, is red, then you think it's high importance. And that's the case for all of you. All of you felt this was highly important. And that means something to me. It means I chose a good activity for you guys to look at. Okay, so anyway, now let's take a look at the two symbols, the triangle and the diamond. The diamond is the ideal location for someone to be. So again, up here in our little legend here. The diamond is a reflection of the desired rating, the desired location, and the triangle is an indication of the average rating. So I'd like you guys to be right here, an expressive driven driver energy. Right now, you guys are slightly to the in-grid side of things of that, maybe a point and a half or so away from the ideal location. And so we'll talk about how you go about moving to a location, but just so quick review of what you know you're looking at. Now, it's interesting that if I start looking at the change grid now layer by layer, I would say to you that one of the things I find most interesting, let's just look at your perceptions, is that all of you considered your ability to be 7 or higher, 1 at 7, 1 at 8. And so you guys are saying in this that you feel that you have a really solid ability to identify these early warning signs that you're overwhelmed, whatever happens to be going on. You reported quite the long range, quite the wide range of difficulty, ranging from 0 all
Whoa.
the way up to 10. And so I always find it interesting when I'm looking at change grid results to kind of go, what are these real ratios that people are looking at when it comes to their perceptions of ability versus challenge? And so whoever D is, let's see. Oh, Rhonda, that's okay. I don't think Rhonda's on our call today. Rhonda considers her ability to be extremely high and the challenge to be extremely low. Now, if she were on the call, I'd like to say, Rhonda, do tell us more about that, for we can all learn from this, from your location. You'd indicate you have this thing more than mastered in that location. So we'd want to check in with you to see if that really is how you perceive things, if you ended up there some other way, or if you legitimately have earned the right to be there, in which case we'd like to know how you really got there.
I suspect lots and lots and lots of practice.
Lots and lots and lots of practice. And by the way, knowing Rhonda as I do, that would not surprise me. Rhonda works for a large auto dealership, and she runs the finance side of things. So when it comes time to really start talking about the money and the nitty gritties and all that, Rhonda's one of the people that you would talk to. Now, add to that, as complex and crazy as that can be, she's doing it remotely, and she's a mom who yeah, yeah. So up until recently was homeschooling. So I think she's really used to overwhelm. And so she may very well, this may be totally legit. So I love that. But you get the idea. It's like, what a wide range of perceived challenge people find on this. So I'd be very curious. Let's see. Sally is also not on the call today. But so, Sally, we'd be curious to know, you rated the challenge as being a 10. What is it about identifying or recognizing signs of being overwhelmed in yourself that pulled a challenge rating of 10? That could be far worse. You could be 11 or 12, but nevertheless, 10 is the highest rating that we got on here. Tom gave it a 9. Tom, what makes it challenging for you? Not the spot, but I just did.
Yeah. Read the question again, please.
No, the question is, what is it about identifying recognizing the signs of being overwhelmed in myself that you find challenging of a 9?
That's high, I would think, for you. I don't know.
But nevertheless, at the
Yeah,
time he filled it out, this was his psychological instant in time.
Mhm.
And so what was what pulled that answer?
I don't know. Maybe it's because people often say to me, "Aren't you upset? Doesn't this bother you?" And I
Yeah.
think to myself, "Whoa, what am I missing?"
Right. Is it supposed to bother me? I didn't read that paragraph. No. It could also just be that, and the reason why I threw it to you as a question is that it may very well, very often be the case that the person has really not answered the question that consciously, if you will. It's more like they're responding based on just an overall sense or a feeling. And for us as coaches and consultants and various types of therapists, that's perfectly good enough for us, because we'll explore it. We'll talk about it in detail. But meanwhile, let's flip around to number C, our letter C. That's Brian. Brian, you gave it a 5. So 5 is a relatively moderate answer, on the low side of moderate. What is it about this activity that you find moderately challenging as opposed to moderately high or high or whatever?
I think this, I'm a highly sensitive person, so it's quite easy for me to identify it. But the challenge becomes the situation itself, like
Yep.
responding in a way um, that I don't get too attached to it. So I'm used to the overwhelm. I'm overwhelmed right now. In fact, being here in South Africa, my sister's issue and a non-supportive husband and that whole deal.
Yeah, yep, yep.
But I try to respond in a way to it once I can recognize it
Good,
that
good, good.
it's not as overwhelming, and that's when I double up on self-care and those kinds of things. But it's quite easy to recognize it. Like I feel it immediately in the body.
All right. And so this is the thing, you see it immediately. Hopefully, you then respond to it immediately.
I can't always do that in some situations, though.
That's what I was going to predict,
Yeah,
because you're plotting in power apathy. So again, for everyone
yeah,
watching these interpretation sessions, the change grid is divided into a lot of different layers, and different layers give us different kinds of information about what's going on with you. In this particular case, we're looking at the 5 levels of productive tension, and almost everybody else is in power. And power, again, is a moderate level of productive tension. There's a whole lot of characteristics that are ruled by the level of tension you're experiencing. You guys are feeling a bit more confident, but you feel like there's work to be done. So you're actively considering doing something, actively doing it. We'll look at that layer in just a second. So on power, kind of on top of things. Well, if something starts to slip down, in this case for Brian, slipping down into power apathy, that just means that it's becoming more of a, I don't know, a routine. There's something that doesn't require this conscious, active participation. The challenge just isn't there. Now, we said the ideal location would be a perceived level of challenge of an 8. And so, yeah, he's 3 points lower than that. But why do we want to keep that perceived level of challenge higher when it comes to recognizing the signs of being overwhelmed in myself?
Because
So, who
it's
do you think is
sneaky.
going to notice it sooner? Somebody here in power or
Somebody in power.
Brian?
It's sneaky. It sneaks up on you. It grabs you from behind and
And
underneath.
that's the thing. As our level
and
of
often
tension,
that's how I feel. A lot of times, like especially in an emergent situation, it's just like it immediately hijacks you, and I'm
yeah,
like,
Right.
okay, it wasn't something I planned on. It's just it's an emergent situation. Now I have to respond. So to T's point, what I do is I say, okay, yeah, I'm going through the emotions, going through the situation. It's starting to, and I delegate literally,
yeah,
schedule time for the recovery. And I
yeah,
have to do that, or else I can't just go from like one emergent situation to another emergent
right. You have
situation,
to
another.
correct the energy. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yep, yep. Yeah. All right. And so that makes sense. Now, Anja's caution is well heeded here. And that is that as something moves further down grid, as tension goes down, the attention that particular activity demands goes down as well. And
Hmm.
so this is moving to the back of your mind a little bit more. It's something that's becoming a bit more routine or whatever. The concern is not where it is right now, as much as where it's heading if it continues on this downward trajectory. So,
Hmm.
and then her point is very, very well taken, to think that there's a lot of times you're going to find yourself overwhelmed and it caught you off guard because
Hmm.
it wasn't really demanding the amount of attention that perhaps that activity does warrant. And so that's
Right.
why we say always be that very calculated. This is an analytical driver. You're trying to make something happen, but it requires you to be able to notice details, figure something out. Again, this activity is about noticing these early warning signs.
You know what I felt when I did this particular one? I said, this is probably a ping pong for me. Kind of like I'm
Right.
going, up, down, up, down, up, down, because as the situation, again, emergent situation, more details are being revealed
Yeah.
and have to respond. And so I'm probably going up, then down, up, and then
Well,
down,
right. But
up,
here,
then
here's
down,
what
up,
you have to
down.
do. you have to first of all realize those are two very different activities. So recognizing when you're overwhelmed is a totally separate activity than responding to whatever emergency has now thrust itself into your reality. And so, yeah, it's absolutely true. An emergency is happening. You're going to be moved upgrade because of that, up to power stress, hopefully not to stress, but things are going to become very upgrade and lots of stuff happening in the moment on the fly. We need people to have had very good training so they can rely on their training to help them through the demands of that particular situation. So that's happening in the upper part of where I'm squiggling around right now, power stress to the upper part of power. That now, once that's over and done with, then a different activity appears on your list, and that is recovering from the demands that that situation just placed on you. Hopefully, recovering from the demand is something that you have a very high level of tension to do, and it's not particularly difficult. However, it has to be difficult enough that it engages you.
Right.
So if we flip to the engagement rings for just a second, you can see that you're plotting in downgrid intention. What does downgrid intention really mean? So again, the engagement rings are how on top of this are you? Are you in a level of engagement where you are just becoming aware of it? Nope, you're beyond that. That you're formulating an intention. But where you are, a downgrid intention sounds very different than plotting further upgrade. Downgrid intention sounds like this. Yeah, someday it would be very likely that I'll spend some energy on this, or someday I'll get around to blah, blah, blah. It's that thing that it's just been moved aside, set off, somewhere. It's still there, and you still have a strong intention around it. But if intention doesn't give rise to engagement, what's going to happen to that intention? Do you think it's likely to become stronger on its own, or is it likely to become less on its own?
No, it becomes less. You gotta do something with it. And that's
Right.
that's why, that plotting there is routine, right? We
Yeah,
have protocols, we have different things that we're going through in an emergent situation, which is what I'm
that's right.
thinking about. And then to your point, the activity shifts to okay, now how am I responding to all these variables and putting things together? And
Yeah,
that's what
yeah,
made me think about that ping pong kind of scenario because it's very routine to respond. Especially if you're on a trauma situation, a trauma team.
sure.
Everyone has specific role, there's specific protocol. Everyone knows exactly what to do, but you still have this heightened sense of like, yeah, this is hijacked. The emotions are going, things
Absolutely.
are
And you're
going
going
on.
to respond as the level of tension would predict, you're going to
Yeah.
end up just to say, well, look at these, stepping into a leader, influencer sort of thing. That's what the situation at hand demands. Do it,
Right.
influence others around you. That's really great. But it's this idea about when you restore it. Now, interesting, let's look at the difference between where you're plotting. And if I look at Tom is at H, and I think who is at F? Okay, Sally. Where these two are plotting for this particular activity, let me just go ahead and change back to the engagement rings for a second. You can see they're in full execution. That means that this activity is something that is in their awareness. They are ready to deal with whatever it is that might come their way. And so later on, we'll be talking about where on the change grid is the best place for you to defend yourself against intrusions onto your pile of things that needs to be done.
Hmm.
So that's really very interesting. Okay, we'll move on to another activity. Questions about this particular one? Any other layers you
Nope,
want to look at, or?
nope.
Yeah, all inside. And again, so in summary, the average, you need to increase your perceived ability as a group by about 3/4 of a point, not very much. So there's a little bit that you can learn about recognizing those signs of being overwhelmed. And we'll talk about that when we get into the actual applications, the action planning part of all this. And that might be next week. Depends how fast we work our way through these. Okay, so we say the very first thing you should do when you realize you're overwhelmed is to interrupt that pattern. Now, again, we have to recognize that if you're overwhelmed, your overwhelm is being populated by two kinds of things in general. Those are things that you need to do and you are going to do, want to do one way or another, or there are things that you now have on your plate that you don't know how they ended up there, or you know how they ended up there and you regret it, but nevertheless, you may very well be stuck with it. Okay, so I'm saying all that just to emphasize that when you are overwhelmed, there is a pile of real stuff. There are things that need to be done. It's not all just happening in your head. There really are things that are going on. And that's the big difference between stress and overwhelm. Overwhelm, there are real things that can be done. Stress, sometimes no, there's not enough information to be able to do that yet. And so I think that as you guys are really looking at this and considering what it is that you're going to be doing next, you have to go, the pile is what the pile is. I got to sort through the pile. But before I begin to confront that pile, we're telling you the next thing you need to do is center yourself the moment you recognize that overwhelm is detected. Why would I be saying that? Why do you think you've just recognized overwhelm is happening? You want to immediately center yourself. Why?
Well, you don't have any productivity.
Yeah, I mean, you're overwhelmed. How's that working for you?
Yeah.
You know? So we got to do something to interrupt that pattern. And the way we interrupt that pattern is to, as quickly as we can, and you get faster at it with practice, you get better at it as you learn the best way that works for you. You want to move yourself to the center of the change grid. Let me change the background here just so we can look at the whole thing for a second. You want to be in the exact center of the change grid. You want to be in a place of perfect balance. Why do you want to be in the center of the change grid when it comes to centering yourself? What happens?
To recover from
recover.
overwhelm.
Yeah. What happens when you're in the center of the change grid? Describe some of the things you might be feeling. And
Peaceful,
Well, you're
easy
detached.
feeling.
you're detached. I heard that. So
Mhm.
yeah, you're able to detach from something, and you could detach from it quite literally. If nothing else, you're taking a pause in the use of time. So right there, you're kind of controlling it there. So yeah, you want to do something to just kind of say, wait, I need to, for a moment, separate myself from all of that pile so that I can do what's another good thing that starts to happen when you're at the center of the change grid. What else are we looking at? So we detach, and that then allows us the ability to be the observer. Yep.
Observing.
Yeah, we
Okay.
got to be observing. We have to say, and in specific, we want to observe the overwhelm. We want to observe the maybe the actual demands of the overwhelm in this particular moment, because maybe certain overwhelming tasks are louder than others, if you will, or there are other people that are involved, or there are external deadlines that are involved. And so, you got to assess all this kind of stuff. And as they're making those assessments, maybe you're also assessing about how did you end up with this anyway? Is there another creative way you might be able to deal with it by delegating it or whatevering? You get the idea. We are in a process now of evaluating what we're doing. Now, we're still inside of our green circle. If I said I wanted you to do a really solid analysis of whatever's going on, you could do that inside of the green circle. You don't have to go out and make yourself uncomfortable in any kind of way. You can just say, hey, from that centered place, I am able to see everything that's going on around me in a detached way. And that the detachment allows me to be a little bit more observant and objective about what's going on. And from that place, I will be able to come up with the best way of handling whatever this overwhelm is. And so, can you hear there's some strong analytical energy, and there's also some strong driver kind of energy, but it's relative. You're leaning out great, but look, you're still an amiable driver if you look at the different energies, right? Right. You guys with me on this? And so now, where are you guys when it comes to moving yourself to center? interestingly enough, and by the way, you all said it was important, so that's reinforcement for me. You guys are plotting much further outward. In fact, on average, you're plotting here on that amiable driver, but on the driven side of things, or a little bit more on the analytical side of things. So not a bad place to be, but I would like you to be able to mellow out about it. So you can just say, this idea about me finding my center and reclaiming my balance is available to me virtually instantly, virtually every moment of every single day. I've got lots of ways of getting myself to a centered place. Some might be handier than others given the circumstances, but I got lots of options that I can go and do this. And how long is it going to take? You know, can you find center in 60 seconds and really get yourself to a good mental place before you attack a giant project or a giant pile of projects? Can you spend 3 minutes just centering yourself and ever? What's the obvious answer?
Yes.
Of course
Yeah.
you can, but you need to do that. And so when someone is plotting this far out grid as A, C, and F are, what that would indicate to me, or I'll throw it to you guys as a question, what would that indicate to you? As far as this idea about centering myself, are they in a centered place?
Oh, no.
No, but this energy could be directed towards finding or reclaiming or achieving that center. And so this is not necessarily a bad place for someone to be plotting around it, because the message here is that I am aware of it. And when I find myself in it, I definitely want to center myself. But right now, I've got this energy that just says, I got to just drive through it. I got to get it done. I don't have
Yeah.
time to be mellowing out. I got to just make it all happen, blah, blah, blah. Well, hopefully there's another voice that's saying, but it'll be a lot easier to do that if I focus this determination on being determined to find my center and reclaim my center. Thoughts about that, anyone?
Yeah, that's what I was explaining, trying to articulate before in terms of like that ping pong I feel. 'Cause,
Yep.
like I volunteer on these trauma teams and I'm trained in emergency medicine. And what I noted was when someone else is leading the trauma team and they're yelling out different kind of instructions, that's a different experience than if I'm the leader of the trauma team.
Yep.
Because I am the ardent observer. I'm leading the trauma team. But if I'm on one of the peripheries, if you will, like I might be opening airway or something like that, and I'm getting instructions from others and I'm trying to hear, that's
Yeah.
a different experience for me.
It's
And
a
it's
different
more,
experience, though, because it's a different activity.
yeah, and it's taking a lot
Yeah,
sometimes
it
to
will
just like,
hijack your energy, and that
yeah,
energy is then not available for what we're talking about
exactly.
here. So I do think it's really interesting that when people are plotting this far out grid, if I started to use words to kind of describe what was going on with people's engagement around it, when we're seeing outgrid engagement and execution, these people are these plottings are trying their best to make something happen. They're saying they've got great ability and it's very challenging, but they got to go out there and make it happen, conquer it. Now, that's a wonderful energy, but we have to look at the activity. We have to look at the verb. And it's about centering myself. So centering myself the moment overwhelm is detected. Is that something that I need to make happen, or do you give me a different verb?
No, ideally you don't want to make it happen. You want to
No,
allow.
what should happen instead? If you're
You
not
want to
making it
allow
happen,
it.
what
It
was that
just
word?
happens naturally.
Yeah,
You're allowing it to
allowing.
happen, or it's simply happening.
Yeah.
You know, it's a natural place for you to automatically move. Well, that would be wonderful. But, you know, a lot of humans don't have a lot of experience with that. And if you've been hijacked often enough to move you far enough away from the center, you might not have been there for a long time. And so you got
Yeah.
to remember, how do I get there? How do I get there? Well, we would be talking about, and maybe we'll do this when we're talking about the actual action plans, but centering yourself in the moment is all about you understanding what your personal PowerPoint maneuvers really are. What are those things that you know you could do in this next moment that would move you to the center of the change grid? And there's infinite variety of things that could do that. It is unique for each person, and each of us has at least a bucket full of them. So for me, let me go for a walk and I'll end up feeling better. Oops, I don't have time to go for a walk. Okay, well, at least let me go outside and get some fresh air. Okay, you get the idea. A lot of the things that you can do that you know will help you get centered may not be practical in the moment. Or may deserve or take or deserve need more time for them to do the job you want them to do. So it's good to have a lot of things you can do in the moment without requiring any kind of resources. Like, can you just close your eyes for a second and center yourself? So there's all kinds of techniques that people have developed, but you guys have to remember that you have them. This is a bit of a restoring of a resource for you to be able to reclaim. But then you got to do it. You got to do it. Unfortunately, one of the things that we know happens very frequently, if not almost always, when it comes to the world of overwhelm, is that people sacrifice the one thing they need to do more than anything else, and that's self-care. So all the self-care stuff now feels suddenly optional because this pile of whatever is there and demanding attention. Well, let's take care of ourselves first. And we don't have to spend hours and days doing it, but could you give yourself a few minutes of time? You get the idea? Yep.
It's easier for some people to
Oh,
do
yeah.
that,
Yeah.
simply because of their personality. For those who are present in the moment, it's or in Myers-Briggs terms, a J,
Yep.
versus those that go with the flow. It's like, okay, it's difficult to be present in the moment. I used to be that way.
Right. Right. And that's why, so many of the things that we do to move ourselves to the center end up being labeled as practices. Like
Yes.
mindfulness is a practice,
Yes.
yoga is a practice. And
Yes.
the practice, in fact, I often think maybe the routine is the most powerful part of the process. Not so much what the process contains as it is the fact that you're doing a process. And that just kind of gives you this empowerment because you're following a routine or you're doing
What
something.
is the J? Because I am INFJ.
That's judging. Yeah,
Judging,
judging.
Ah,
And the opposite
okay.
would be perceiving.
Got it.
And you
Okay.
tend to make lists and actually keep them and find them.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Yep. Well, and Brian, that I think that, I don't think that any of us who are even remotely versed in Myers-Briggs would be surprised to recognize you're a J.
Why
That's
so?
because you are a definitive kind of person. When you talk about
Yeah.
the kinds of things you're working with, your frustrations are really about them not getting on board and doing what needs to be done and blah, blah, blah. And in your head, this is so obvious. Why does it even need to be spoken of?
No.
It's because
Yeah,
they all aren't necessarily J's.
you're right.
Oh, got it. That makes
Yeah.
sense now.
See, although this isn't a personality test, we've talked about why that's the case or whatever. Personality is still a thing, and some are
Mhm.
certainly better than others, and maybe a
Mm-hmm.
certain combination would be the best of all. But you are you, and while you are unique among all of humanity, inside of you is a set of patterns. And once those patterns are identified and understood by yourself and others, it becomes far easier to kind of understand
Right.
how you operate. Yeah. So go right
You know,
ahead. Yeah.
now that you mention that, I think, well, I don't think, I know that pattern is probably even what drives me to stress. Because, like, even in an emergent situation, I'm like, okay, let's still treat this person as a human being. Like, they're going through things, cutting clothes off and doing all these things, and just like, maneuvering the individual around. And I'm like, guys, you can hear the person like screaming sometimes because they're
Yeah.
in pain. And I'm
No,
like, okay, let's
right.
let's slow down a little bit. And that's common sense to me. So I get heightened stress from seeing this go on. So I'm like, okay,
No, it's true.
maybe
It's
I
true.
need not to be on
Well,
the
and
trauma too.
to kind of, I think to kind of illustrate this, we when we talk about tension flow, we've talked about the master stream before and how over a thought process, the level of tension is going to rise and fall and through a very predictable series of changes and all that sort of stuff. One of the things that we've described the master stream as actually looking like is a roller coaster.
Mhm.
We do want to remind everyone who's in this job of managing tension, and certainly you all are when it comes to doing whatever it is you do. That roller coaster has two seats up front. You want to make sure that you are not having the same experience as the person who's sitting next to you, as both of you are on this roller coaster. You with me? They're going to feel out of control. If it's a decent roller coaster, they're going to feel out of control. And you need to be solid and steady. And so, yeah, it's true that if I go into an emergency room and the emergency team is just as far upgrid as I am, I'm in serious trouble.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I get it. I want them to have a heightened level of awareness and engagement and all that, but I don't want them to be up in stress or anything like that. No, I want them to be in power where we're watching things run like clockwork. And then if something really weird happens, then yeah, the tension is going to become focused to that. But again, they're going to plug in their training, plug in their programming in a way that it goes. So can you stay in power while the rest of those around you are up in stress or down in apathy? Because only you in that position can do the right thing in the right way at the right time.
You know,
Those outcomes are part of being in power and being outgrid, doing the right thing at the right way at the right time, and yeah, winning. Winning is what it's all
oh,
about.
it's interesting you say winning. Lately, I've been watching a lot of the girls' basketball, particularly Caitlin Clark, who's plays for Iowa. And you can see if you look at the coaches, you can see who can get centered more quickly than another coach.
That's right.
And there's a way that I have always thought of basketball players. I don't care if it's men or women, how they slow it down to take control of a situation.
Right.
And anybody can do that. So, Brian, you have the ability to slow things down through your breathing, through your looks. And I'm just guessing because you can do that even if you're not, quote, the leader.
Right.
Yeah,
So
you're the leader of you. And
Right.
it's absolutely right. Great advice, Steve.
I like that analogy because I call that, as athletes of my family, and Caitlin Clark is amazing. But I call that the athletes that are great. They don't complain about the rules of the game, like they're
No.
subject to the same rules. But I call that they do have a signature presence.
yes.
And someone trying to duplicate your signature, that's false ID. And I think oftentimes because I'm not detached, I operate in this false ID, this false identification that's not like myself. And that brings me up in terms of stress. And so I have to bring down, to your point, engage in these practices that I know that I can do. Been doing it for over 30
Exactly. But
years.
in that moment, if your tension or your drive has been hijacked one way or another, it becomes increasingly, let me say, difficult to even remember that you could go do this, or you haven't done this, or you need to do this.
Yeah.
But that's I think the analogy with basketball is really good, because basketball is an interesting sport. When someone has the ball and you've got all these other players on the court, it's interesting how people give them some space until motion starts to happen. It's like
I follow
really
that. I'm in Connecticut, and I've been following the Yukon girls for day one, and they've had a really hard year, and they're emerging out in front now. And boy, it is fascinating to watch them through all of their changes. And I learn a lot by watching them play.
That game in most sports are really, I think, I want to say, it really is, tension just being expressed through a unique form. So it's all tension management. They're managing their own tension. They're trying to manage the tension of the opponents. You've got all the audience that are coming at them. The whole thing is an exercise in tension management that happens to have this activity happening at the same time. So the people who do the best job of tension management are the people who are going to achieve greatness. I mean, the location of greatness on the change grid is right here at 1010. That is greatness.
Mm.
Now, again, it's activity specific. Don't you guys here at FCNA think that you're so close to achieving greatness when it comes to centering yourself? Okay, you belong here. Greatness is in the center for that activity. But for a lot of things associated with accomplishment, winning, whatever, that's where you want to be. 10-10. So yeah.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Wait,
who's just asking a question? Was that Edie or Linda?
Yeah,
I'll go after Brian. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
So the basketball analogy, the tension of offense and defense, right? Because oftentimes, if you're not good on offense, like where you're missing your shots, you try to, as the coaches would tell you, let the game come to you. And so you might be great on the defense side to create the offense. Those are two different tension perspectives.
Right. Well, and you got to get back to like a fundamental truth that no one has ever won a game from an entirely defensive position.
Right.
Sooner or later, you got to take your shots, not just block all theirs. You're just going to end up with, a stalemate or whatever. But nope. Okay. Shall we look at another activity?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
you know what, T, I was just going to share an example. I'm not a Duke fan, but I think Coach K is incredible. And I remember when I what was that?
I am a Duke fan. I'm a Dookie. I went to graduate school there. So.
Oh, did you? No, but he's incredible. But I remember, it's got to be 25, 30 years ago. They were playing in the tournaments, Kentucky. They were behind by 22, 23 points at halftime already. And they came out and they won by about 22, 23 points. That's almost 50-point differential. Everybody wanted to know, what did Coach K do at halftime? And you know what he said? Guess. This is a quiz.
Take a breath. Take a rest.
Yeah. He said, have fun.
Enjoy.
Have fun.
Be reminded.
And what a strategist on tension management, huh?
Well, that statement alone, if you tell someone who, instead of feeling fun, is feeling not fun, well, I would say not fun is more likely to be up in stress, and fun is in power stress.
Yeah.
So let's get here. This isn't helping. Let's get here. Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Okay, let's take a look at the next activity. This is prioritizing self-care even when feeling overwhelmed. So we talked about this briefly. You got to take care of yourself if you have any hope of taking care of anybody else. Interestingly enough, as does work out on occasion, the average location, again, the triangle is sitting darn close on top of the ideal location. The triangle represents the average, but as is often the case, the average represents not a single one of you. Okay, so you're right here. F, A, B, D, G, E, C. H is at the right location, but this is a very interesting little thing that we see here, and so. We say when it comes to this particular activity, which again, I'll just kind of keep it, prioritizing self-care when feeling overwhelmed. Now, we've said that the ideal location for this activity, let me change the background to the energy levels, is we want someone to be a driven, amiable driver. A driven, amiable driver. First of all, they're a driver. They're trying to get somewhere. They're trying to make something happen. But they're an amiable person. So an amiable person is looking at it from the human kind of perspective. But they have another little bit of driver thrown in. So they just want to use that to really make something happen. So you get the idea? A driven, amiable driver. I'm going to make something happen, coming from a heart space, but I'm going to make it happen. So, yeah. Now, why do we say that's a great place to be when it comes to prioritizing self-care? By the way, I would describe one of the behaviors, someone who's at this location, whoever H is, Tom, they can pester people. They pester themselves. They don't let it drop. That's that third little dose of driver coming into play. It just says, yeah, I'm here to, it's got to get done. Yeah, I'm here to support all the people involved, but it's got to get done. So,
yeah.
All right, thoughts about that?
Too much yakking, not enough smacking.
There you go. And that's it, a driven, amiable driver. I love you with both of my hands.
In this switch I just got.
You decide if it's going to be a hug or a hit. I don't make these decisions. So, I just respond. I'm here to administer. Okay, but you guys definitely get the idea here. We believe that when it comes to you prioritizing self-care, you got to take care of yourself. And that means that amiable energy has to be self-directed or self-aimed. Now, if you look where this falls as far as balance goes, it's right on that edge. We're saying, look, you're about to go out there and deal with life that needs to be dealt with. Before you go out there and deal with life, could you just take a minute, take good care of you? Or be reminded, take care of you as we go deal with whatever it is that needs to be done. Many of you are already inside of the green circle as far as this activity is concerned. For you, I would say, well, aren't you comfortable when it comes to taking care of yourself? I just want to know if sooner or later self-care is going to morph into action being taken. You get the idea? So it's great if you're doing all this. Do you know how much time in a day you could spend on self-care if you stayed where you guys are inside the green circle? All day is self-care, and that can be wonderful. So you're doing your classes and you're doing your breathing and you're eating well. All the self-care stuff is happening, top priority. That's really good, but that's not where life is lived, right? So sooner or later we got to go do whatever that pile of stuff is. By the way, self-care, I bring that up because I did want to say that self-care can become a form of creative avoidance. Right? Soak in that for just a second. Self-care can become a form of creative avoidance. What do I mean by that?
It's a way of postponing dealing with other stuff.
Yeah, particularly since you're filling your time with something that you've said, but it's self-care, it's good. Yeah, so it's a great way to justify this creative avoidance of whatever it is that ultimately needs to be done. So take care of yourself, but yeah,
T, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I seem to, and I've always struggled forever with the change, the size component.
Yeah.
Most of my size measures are low.
Good.
And I don't think that's really true.
No, I think,
but I don't know. Could you just explain it again? Because everyone else is has higher sizes than I do. And I know that I was feeling very overwhelmed, not taking this change grid, but at the time I was taking change grid.
Yeah.
Okay. Going on.
Well, certainly overwhelm and size are going to go hand in hand because overwhelm is really an issue of capacity. Rather than capabilities. If I'm up in stress, I'm looking at my ability, I'm looking at the challenge. I got to develop greater levels of capability to handle it. If you're plotting in an overwhelmed situation, you're more likely to be outgrid, where it's really more of a capacity issue. And that's where size becomes something that we have to factor in. Now, I can give people examples, and I do give people examples of what the extremes might be. But even if I do that, they're going to answer from a different part of their brain. So let me explain that. Do you want to know what a 12 for a size is really? That would be a single activity. And I literally mean that, a single activity that is going to gobble up every single morsel of capacity you have on a particularly given day. Now, I'm sure we've had a few times in life where we've had one of those days where it's less like, I absolutely have to stay focused on this, like it's moving day. Get up early, fill the truck, whatever it is, you got to get this done today. It's filling your whole capacity. And so on the other hand, there's a whole lot of things like, look at the activities here, recognizing signs of being overwhelmed in myself. How big do you think that task actually is versus how big do you perceive it as being? You with me on this? Or when I think about centering myself the moment, these are things, recognizing signs happens inside of a matter of minutes, maybe even seconds. It's not big by any scale we're looking at, right? Because
unless you're a little bit in denial.
This is the whole point.
I can do it, damn it.
That's right. That's what we're getting to, the difference between perception and actuality. So in actuality, these first few activities are really measured in minutes. Nothing that's measured in minutes is going to be at the high end of the scale. Maybe I can come up with one, but you get the idea. It's like, no. These are simple things. These are thoughts I need to have, decisions I need to make. It's not going to take me all day and consume all of my resources. Now, people go, well, then why don't you tell people that? Why don't you stress that more? It's kind of like, I'm more interested in your perception of the size of it than I am in whether we can get consensus about how big the task is of centering yourself. You with me on this? So when people tell me these are really big tasks, I know I've got workspace available to me, because if they think that's a big task and I can show them it's a little task, what do they suddenly get to reclaim? They get to reclaim capacity. And so again, we can spend a lot of time talking about this whole capacity kind of issue, but your actual capacity as a human is what would I say? Is far greater than your perceptions are under certain circumstances and far less in others. So let me see if I can kind of explain that for you. In actuality, doing a project like moving a house may feel like a 12, but in actuality, it's probably a what? A 2 or 3. You have a lot more ability than you think. It's not going to be something that's going to require all of your resources for weeks to come or anything like that. This is an event. It's going to be over and done with. So we can let something that really isn't all that big fill our entire perceived capacity. And what law says that work expands to fill all of the time allowed for its completion? It's not Parkinson's law. I forget what the law is, but work expands to fill all of the time allowed for its completion. Yeah, well, it's a good one to look up just because it's going to torment me if I can't remember who it belongs to. But I've always thought about that I could actually, my capacity is far greater than I perceive it to be if I will become more accurate in my my understanding of the things that really are in it. I guess it's a lot of babbling just to say that you are capable of far more than you think you are, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to look at it by, are you feeling overwhelmed or underutilized?
I wonder, it seems to be human tendency in terms of biology that we tend to overestimate capabilities but underestimate capacity. Like they did a study on how people see those shows, what's that HGTV thing?
Sure, yeah, do
People
it
see
yourself.
like those, those
Oh, I
home
wrecked my
garden
house.
shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those kinds of shows, and so they see the reconstruction of the home, the project, in an hour show.
Yeah.
But it actually took 6-7 months, and so people go out and they like go flood the Home Depots and those things, thinking that they actually can do it, and they realize they don't have the time, energy, attention, and they wreck their house.
Right, and it does take some real talent and some experience would help,
Right.
and electricity can kill you. So.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. But it's not humans in general. I would say too that we've looked at this on many an occasion. People in certain, you can overrepresent, underrepresent, or accurately represent both of these dimensions. People in our culture have a tendency to over or underrepresent their ability. What would you say? Overrepresent our abilities. We believe our own PR. We
a man's reach should exceed his grasp, or what's a heaven for?
There you go. And perceived challenge, we have a tendency to underestimate or overestimate the challenge.
Underestimate.
Underestimated. As a result, we end up down in power, apathy. And as a result, we're more than happy to go and say, yeah, I'll just go buy what I need at one of the big box stores and it'll all be really, really great. And I'll get it all done. Well, then you find out, okay, I needed to have done something here. Then you find out that lo and behold, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. We have a tendency to overrepresent our ability and underrepresent the challenge of something. There are other cultures.
See, that reminds me of how many times you think you have everything from Home Depot, and then you have to make another trip.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, it's absolutely true. It's on and on and on and on and on. But it's because of this, of the way we think about things. Now, that might be part of our culture. That might be part of our generation. But there are other cultures, other generations who carry very different fundamental biases in their perceptions. Other cultures may have been raised to always underrepresent their ability. And perhaps minimize the challenge as well. So think about if you're basically saying, you're presenting yourself with great humility, you are underrepresenting your ability, etc. And so, but at the same time, you're saying, but I can do this task. I will do this task. And so you don't want anyone to think that you're full of yourself when it comes to your perceived ability. And you don't want anyone to think that they have imposed upon you or put you in a difficult situation. So you've been raised to rise to the occasion in quiet humility. Never tell anyone how difficult something was or anything like that. You just do it. Can you guys relate to this kind of happening?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's other cultures. Yes.
The principle that you were speaking of earlier is called the Pareto principle.
Pareto. Thank you. Yeah. Wonderful.
That's the 80-20 thing.
Yeah, well, it's all in that same kind of writing. I might have been in the same sort of book, but okay. There are other cultures who overrepresent both their ability and the challenge. And these are, again, cultures that are really all about competing. So willing to say, I've got tremendous ability, bring on the challenge. Of course we can do this. We can do anything. Most of our, other people, they can't begin to do it, but we can, so there's this whole idea about compared to everyone else, we're big and wonderful and great. And so of course we're going to take on the greatest challenges. So if we now do something for somebody coming from that mindset and they go, thank you so much, tell us about the experience. I'm going to say to you, it was very, very difficult. You're lucky that I have the ability that I have. So you get the idea. This is going to be that kind of personality or that kind of culture, that kind of belief system that's going in there.
Yeah, so on the change grid, though, we can see the gaps between that kind of cultural evolution and biological evolution. Because biologically, the body's designed to preserve and conserve energy at all costs. And that's why biases and these patterns that we were talking about become important. But I think our world at large is experiencing a true gap between cultural evolution and biological evolution. So culturally, we evolved, I think, a lot faster than our biology can keep up.
Well, of course. I mean, human physiological changes in a human are probably imperceptible in the past couple of 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
Or tiny, where changes in culture 200 years ago, there was nothing of our culture today that would have been there, other than maybe some interactive kinds of things, but everything else has changed. And so again, we're talking about this particular activity, though, about prioritizing self-care, because we have to make sure we're okay. Let's kind of move on, if we can, to insulating yourself from external factors that contribute to overwhelm. But I did just want to finish off. So Kathy, that's, I think, the only thing I wanted to add to what you were saying there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I can see the pattern and see what the issue is for me. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And we can say it's patterns, but it's not necessarily in a full thing. I can say there are certain patterns that I believe, as unwoke as this will sound, are gender specific. And there are other things that are going to be, if you're from the East Coast of the country versus the West Coast or the North or the South, I can tell you there's all kinds of things that we can predict. on the change grid that may not be popular, but are nevertheless still quite accurate. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Stereotypes are stereotypes because more often than not, they're true.
Yeah. Hopefully we won't get canceled.
Well, but even still, it's kind of like, okay, I mean, I'm mostly retired. So what does that mean? I do this for the joy.
Right.
Okay. All right. Let's look at one more activity if we can, everybody, and at least know we've attacked 4 of them. So this is about insulating yourself from external factors that contribute to overwhelm. And so here y'all are. Now, when I say something like insulate yourself, that should immediately tell you the ideal location on this change grid is going to be here as that amiable driven driver. If we look energetically at what's going on, this location on the change grid is you being the absolute best protector of your realm. And again, look at the verb we're looking at here. This is insulating yourself from external factors that contribute to overwhelm. Do you want that task done by someone who's down in apathy or up in stress or is too amiable for their own good? No. Who needs to do this job in order to make sure that you are insulated from external factors that contribute to overwhelm?
You.
Yeah, you got to be on top of it. This is the driven driver in you that says, this is the boundary. I enforce the boundary. Now, all of y'all are plotting further in grid than that. A couple of you are plotting in the awareness kind of engagement ring. So yeah, this is happening. D, it actually even disturbs you a little bit that these things are, coming your way. And by the way, you've also reported your ability as being barely half of what the challenge requires. And so this is really a great growth opportunity for you in particular. Some of you are in intention. Some of you are actually in engagement. You blend you all together. You're on the right path. But are you guys being strong enough advocates for yourself when it comes to insulating yourself from external factors that contribute to that overwhelm?
Well, I don't know if I perceived that question correctly then.
Well, let's find out. Where are you? Brian is C. Yeah, Brian, you're pretty much at the center of the change grid on the subject. Yeah, you are at the center of the change grid. So when it comes to insulating yourself from external factors, you are as insulated as a person can get. The best place for you to buffer yourself from doing this is to be in the center. But because very few people are there, we have to say, what's the work to be done? The work to be done is become a good centurion. And as you can push away these things that are imposing themselves on your reality, these external factors that are causing your overwhelm, you keep pushing them away. What you're basically doing is cleaning all the mess out of your way so you can get back to your peaceful inside the green circle life. Right?
That's I think I took that question to be as like you're blocking it out, because I do have that ability to do that.
If that works for you, that works for you. You're insulating yourself. You're stopping it from happening, or you're stopping it from impacting you. It's great that you've been able to kind of build this level of insulation that is to be here on the change grid accurately would be that it kind of takes care of itself. You don't really need to think about this activity. Your nature is to stop these factors from coming in and bothering, harshing your mellow. I'm going to challenge that for you in just a second, but everybody else out here is kind of going like, oh no, there's more challenge to it than that. And I've got to work on my ability to make that insulation happen. I need to do something very deliberate in order to have that outcome really happen. And so I would say the place on the change grid where I can tell you most reliably you will be insulated is if you're out here at 1010. If you're further in grid, you may be you're on the right track because you're getting better at it. Central movement is what we're looking at for this one. But there you happen to be. So Brian, I'm going to challenge what you said. If you are really so much at peace and centered and balanced and harmonious about insulating yourself from external factors that contribute to overwhelm, this group of people that are on your committee? Yeah, these committees?
Yes.
Okay, they're contributors to your overwhelm. So sometimes you've shared with us that the insulation hasn't been quite as protective as you might, because they bother you. And if I'm
Well,
fully
yeah,
insulated,
I
they wouldn't
allow
even
it to
bother me.
happen.
What's that?
I allow it to happen.
Do you allow it to happen? You allow it to happen. And that's
Yeah.
why the counsel of the grid here would be, we need you to move further out grid. All of you need to move further out grid until the day comes, if ever, that you can say, I am so insulated from these external factors coming my way that I'm basically Teflon. Nothing's going to stick to me. Nothing's going to bother me. I'm a combination of Teflon and rubber. It bounces off of me. I don't even notice that it's even happening. Maybe, just maybe, we can achieve moments of that. And if we devoted our life to really cultivating and achieving this centered experience, maybe we can actually get there. But for most people, most of the time, there's work to be done. Constantly having to say, how do I say no? What am I allowing? What's my role in these things that I have invited onto my plate? What can I do to make sure this? And by the way, the big skill set here is learning how to say no and accepting whatever the consequences are, that the benefit to you outweighs the consequences that may come your way. That will not always be the case. Sometimes the consequence is greater than the benefit, in which case you pay the price for whatever reasons you've identified as being legitimate, reasons for you to make this decision this time. But you may change things moving forward.
I think my friends from North Carolina will say I'm a hot mess.
Hot mess. Well, I'd have to see your grid, but since you want to know, we're all curious. Is Brian a hot mess? I don't think so. I mean, I would have remembered, although I don't know if I really look through these at the individual level. All right, everybody, this is Brian. Yeah, you're
I'm
off grid
all
on a
over
lot of
the
stuff,
place.
down grid on some.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's number 10? 10 is enforcing strict boundaries. That's darn close to where I want you to be anyway. That's another 10-10 activity. So yeah, no, Brian, you're not as bad off as you think.
As you seem.
Yeah, but it's good that you're thinking about it. Okay, it's 10 minutes after the hour. So wouldn't we chat next time? We'll look at a few more of these and see how we're doing on doing it. Are you guys finding this level of detail interesting and useful?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Then I'm okay. I'm certainly okay doing this. I did get one piece of feedback I'll take to heart on the next subject. And that's that, how last call, the discovery session, we ended it by working our way through the activity list. Someone suggested that it might have been good for us to do that while demonstrating how a change grid is filled out, because the list is there too. And I could say, if you got to think about your ability and the challenge and, whatever, and show people mechanically how you fill out a change grid. So if it's the first grid someone's ever about to fill out, they've gotten a little bit more orientation to that. So it's no more complicated than me just showing you the activity list on an active change grid instead of, as I do it here, which is on a change grid report or a change grid that hasn't been deployed yet. So,
that's a great idea.
What's that?
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I think so too. It is something people need to become comfortable filling out a change grid. Once you do it a couple of times, you get comfortable with it and you get a lot faster at it too. A lot faster at it. Okay, but keep in mind, and again, this is for all of you that are really serious students of the Oracle of the Self, or really are finding this exploration series good. The most important part of each of these explorations is not the change grid, the results, and the discussion we have. It's the conversation you had with yourself as you filled the change grid out. So this particular application of the change grid is not about me as an external consultant trying to figure out what's going on with you as a client. This is about you figuring out you better. And so the most important part of filling out a change grid is allowing these conversations, these thoughts that you're having as each one of these activities is explored. That's what's really important. And as long as you're getting benefit from the act of filling a change grid out, all good is happening. All good is happening. Okay,
I'm
questions,
often
comments? Yep.
interested in from my journals, like what state of mind I'm in that when I meet the change, the activity list. That's what I've been keeping track of. And it's always interesting that I'm going backwards to something that might have just happened
Yep.
that perhaps I'm recovering from, but it's not like I went
Well,
center first and then did the
no,
change.
What you're doing is you're paying attention to where you find your tension. And that's
Yeah.
the ideal situation. Again, we want to give everybody an activity. The activity is neutral. How they choose to respond to the activity, how they choose to explore and understand the activity, that's very important from the Oracle perspective. And if I was working with any of you as a one-on-one coach or whatever, I would want you to share with me a lot of what that process was that led you to this particular assessment on that particular moment in time. But when we're doing this as the exploration, we have to keep things a little bit more general for everyone. Yeah, y'all know what to do if you want a private reading. Just reach out. We'll let you know. Okay. Any other comments, questions?
No, I'm going to be filling one out though. This is
please do. Yeah, it'll always be active. The link never passes. So
thank you. I understand how delusional I am about size. So thank you.
But again, here's the thing. I mean, it's interesting that an activity that is so little. I mean, how many of you ever had a simple activity, not more than 10 minutes worth of actual work, and you've spent days dreading it? Days coming up with creative ways to avoid it, and you could have had it done 100 times by the time you actually get around to doing it. So even an activity that should just be green can still end up being red because it's just you're allowing it to consume whatever it is. Or
no, I'm going in the opposite direction. That's what I mean by delusional. I'm going in the opposite direction.
Are you now? Okay. Yeah, well, there's that too, underestimated.
That's another day.
Okay, good. All right, well, thanks everyone for joining in. We will continue where we left off next time around. So thanks.
Okay, be well.
Have a good day, everybody.
Adios.